Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Gurudeva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhu Cha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Jai Guru Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Visvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we've been talking about the Sukshma Sharira, subtle body. So what verse are we on this evening?
We're on verse 97.
Verse 97.
Idam shariram gunu sukshma sangitam lingam tvapanche kritabhuta sambhavam savasanam karma phalanubhavakam swajnana tonadi rupadi ratmanaha. This subtle body, listen carefully, also called the linga sharira, produced from the subtle elements, is possessed of the inclinations, vasanas, and it causes the individual to experience the fruits of his past actions. It is the beginningless conditioning on the self brought about by its own ignorance.
Yes. So this Sukshma Sharira, here in this particular paradigm, it includes the vasanas. Sometimes the scriptures will split the vasanas away, call those the Karana Sharira, the causal body. We'll get to that. But for now, he talks about it. This is what we call the transmigrating soul, the subtle body. So if you know of anybody who astrally projects, that's what goes out and around. Or somebody who is able to control their dreams and go to places in their dreams. That's the body that they do it. It's comprised of the subtle elements, meaning we have all the sense perceptions and form and stuff. It's a subtle world compared to the gross world of the waking state. It is in the subtle body that the residuals of our karmas make an impression. These impressions are called vasanas. Did we go into the definition of vasana last week?
I think so.
Yes?
No.
Okay. We have in many, many other classes, but it's so important to review it. Vasana comes from the root vasati, which means to linger or dwell overnight. So oftentimes it's compared to a fragrance that's left in a room. So the idea is They are the impressions that are left in the unconscious as the result of previously performed egoistic actions. What do we mean by egoistic actions? They have I-ness and minus wrapped up in them. Vasana is a subset of sanskara. Now, sometimes they're used interchangeably. I think in the Goenka tradition, they call them sankharas. Sanskaras, same word. But sanskaras, as we've looked at them here, are not necessarily problematic. Do you know that's a table? You know it's a table because you were taught it's a table. That doesn't particularly cause you to suffer. That's a lamp. You know it's a lamp. You were taught that it's a lamp. In ancient cultures or different cultures, different sanskaras. Werner Erhard used to say that this is a chair for us here in the West, but for an Australian Aborigine, it's firewood. They don't have an idea for chair, you see. So those are our sanskaras. They're not problematic. We could not function in the world without them. But when I-ness and minus is involved, then it's problematic. Clearest example. Who here drove tonight in a car? Okay. Do you know what your car alarm sounds like?
No.
So,
But if I did.
if we're sitting in class and all of a sudden someone's car alarm goes off, you might think, oh, that's too bad, someone got their car broken into. But if you're parked in an area where you hear the car alarm going on, what's the next thought that you have?
Is it mine?
Yes, is it my car? And if it is my car, well, that's a tragedy, you know, which is very different if it's just, oh, that's too bad, somebody got their car broken into. I-ness and minus. When I engage in an activity in the world, and after the fact, I engage in what we call chintya. Chintya in Hindi means worry. Sanskrit, it means after the fact rumination, positively or negatively, over an experience. Then it leaves an impression of us. And those are collected in the subtle body. And this is what impels us into activity. So in the West, we have the idea of I have free will. I choose to do this. I have free will. But we rarely think, why do I choose that? You know, did you choose to go into cooking as a profession because you loved it?
It just happened.
Just happened. But, or if you do music, or you do art, or you do IT, or you do sales, whatever it is that you do, why did you choose it? And yoga says you didn't really have a choice. It was the force of the past maturing. It was the vasanas. And many of these go back lifetimes. Now, I jokingly say to people, if I'm at the supermarket and I get in a line for checkout, it will always be the slowest line. If I'm with somebody, in the old days when I was driving, or even if I'm in the car and we're heading towards the where they used to take the money on the bridge, the toll takers. Whichever car I'm in the slowest line. And I jokingly say to people, well, it's because in the Middle Ages, I drove this great big huge ox cart and I would always just drive slowly in the middle of the road and everybody would back up. Now it's a joke, but there's an understanding that everything we experience is the force of the past maturing. I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and one of the fellows was sharing. He used to believe in God, but he doesn't anymore. He cannot believe in a loving God that would let young girls be raped in Darfur. And because young girls get raped in Darfur, there can't be a God. I have found the only thing that reconciles bad things happen to innocent and good people, and how the bad people tend to get away with stuff, is this deep understanding of karma as it's spread out over life. It's the only explanation that makes sense to me. Otherwise, it's a pretty random and chaotic universe. Anywho, so this is why I choose to do X, Y, and Z, and also why I experience A, B, and C. So, for example, in Gita, Krishna will say, thy right is to work alone, never to its fruits. I am the karma phala data. I am the giver of the fruits of action. That doesn't mean there's a God up there in the sky who says, I like Wendy, I think I'm going to give her blessings, and I don't like Daniel, I'm going to give him tribulation. No, it means that there's this deep law of cause and effect. So the actions that we do create impressions in our psyche, which at a future time, many lifetimes later perhaps, impel us into action. And those karmas also create the reactions that we get in life. All the way back to the qualification to the fit student who remembers titiksha.
Forbearance.
And what's it mean?
Forbearance.
What does forbearance mean?
Oh. So, the strength to get through with things.
To be able to endure the vicissitudes of life, but it's not about, oh, I'm a martyr, so, I'm being so spiritual, I'm practicing titiksha. No, it comes from a deep understanding of the law of karma. We don't get what we want in life. Listen carefully. We don't even get what we need. What we get is the inevitable results of our past actions. So, that's why what happens, happens. So, in the subtle body are the vasanas. Now, we've talked a bit about a vasana has two powers. A Varana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. Avarana Shakti means veiling power. Vikshepa Shakti means projecting power. Kshipati means to like throw or hurl a spear. What does that mean? It is the vasanas themselves that comprise my spiritual ignorance. When there is vasana in the subtle body, it manifests as the non-apprehension of myself as Brahman. It's a spiritual sleep. The Vikshepa Shakti, the projecting power, I think I'm a person. I'm identified with the body. And there's a world of name and form out there that is joy-giving and misery-producing. And let's get busy with life. As Hamlet says, grunting and sweating under a weary life. Varana Shakti, veiling power. Vikshepa Shakti, projecting. The two powers of a vasana. They comprise my spiritual ignorance. And the impulse that impels us from incarnation to incarnation. Now, you don't have to believe in the doctrine of reincarnation. It simply impels us from situation to situation. Going back 10, 15 years ago, I suspect most of you lived in a different place. Might have had different relationships. Might have been at school or working at something else. Who was doing that? What made everything change? Well, the decisions you made ultimately, and the force of your past maturity. And part of the nature of the mind when it's under the throes of vasana, well, this isn't quite working out. Let me try something else. I'll be happy when. It'll be better if. Or sometimes it's just discontent. I don't even know what's wrong, but I don't like it. Nancy. Any thoughts about the nature of a vasana? They reside in the subtle body. When the subtle body then moves into the physical body, it impels us into the zoo of my life.
Hi, Jim. This is Atik.
Hello.
So, will we eventually get to how do we release a vasana that has formed in the past and not let it, continue the cycle? Could we talk about?
You've actually already been given the tools.
It's the four, the Viveka, Vairagya, the
Those are
Shama
the two.
qualities, and okay.
That brings the mind into some subtlety.
Okay.
But the root is Avarana Shakti, which is spiritual ignorance. The antidote to ignorance is knowledge. When you are aware of your essential nature, experientially as Brahman, and you know experientially the world of name and form as trinkets and baubles, that satisfaction is the mind abiding in the self. Mind you, this doesn't mean you don't act in the world. But how do you know your mind is, at least for a moment, free from vasana? You have knowledge of your self nature. So the problem is ignorance, and the antidote is knowledge. And again, we separate this into what we call paroksha jnanam, indirect knowledge, which you get from the teacher in the scripture, and aparoksha jnanam, direct experience, which comes from your own practice. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yes.
Excellent question. All
Uh,
right. Go ahead.
One more question. So, they say, oh, I became in sales because my ancestors had been doing sales forever, and that's why I'm doing sales. Is there any substance to that?
In the end, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay.
In India, we have what's called jati, which is your ancestral profession. And so, our families were barbers. So I got to be a barber because that's what our family does, or our family were sales, or our family were all Brahmin scholars. So that's what I got to do, So it's somewhat related to, but not the same as the caste system. Of course, those people who in India converted to Islam allowed a much greater sense of social movement and freedom. But in the end, all of that has to do with our own vasanas. Okay. If you're born into a family of a certain profession, that's something you decided before you came into this life.
Okay.
All right, next verse.
The next verse is two verses combined, so I'm going to read them together.
Okay.
Swapno bhavatyasya vibhatyavastha swamatra sheshena vibhati yatra swapne tu buddhi swayameva jagra svakali nanavi dhavasanabhi katra dibhavam pratipadhya rajate yatra swayam bhati hayam paratma धीमात्र कोपाधि प्रशिष साक्षी न लिप्यते तत्कृत कर्मलेशै यस्मादसंग गस्तत एव कर्मभिः न लिप्यते किंचित् उपाधिना कृतैः. Dream is the state when the subtle body is distinctly in expression, where it expresses all by itself. In dream, the intellect by itself reveals as the agent of experiences, etc., due to the various impressions gathered by it in its waking state. In this condition, the Supreme Self shines in its own glory, with the intellect as its only conditioning, witness of everything, and it is not contaminated in the least by the activities of the intellect. Since it is entirely unattached, it is not tainted by any action that its apparent conditionings may perform.
So, as I had said earlier, the state in which the subtle body is in its own expression is the dream state. Now, in the dream, you have avarana shakti and vikshepa shakti on a microcosmic scale. What do I mean by this? So you get ready for bed. You drink your chamomile tea, you take a hot bath, you put on your jammies, you get into bed and you punch your pillow and you go into deep sleep. Sleep is the non-apprehension of yourself as the waker of Anashakti. Then what happens? Dream. Ta-da! And you create a dream body and a dream ego identified with it. And in the dream, I work out the undigested impressions from the waking state. My dream about a teacher, where did that come from? Undigested impression from the waking state. Now, there are what I call big dreams, which can be prophetic. But that's not 99% of our dreams. 99% of our dreams are what I call garbage humping dreams. It's where the mind works out the undigested impressions of the waking state, just as Shankara said. And the only upadhis, conditionings, are just the subtle intellect, which manifests as the subtle body. We don't have the prana necessarily and the physical body. Now, one of the things that Shankara has said is this ignorance is beginningless. He said that in the last verse. Now that can be daunting, because if something is beginningless, does that mean it's endless? No. Two ways to look at it. First is the way the logicians look at it, which is kind of cool, but weird. Here is a glass. I bought these about 15 years ago. They were on sale down on 4th Street. So let's just, for the sake of talking, I bought them in, let's say, 2005. I can't remember exactly. So prior to 2005, they were non-existent. How long were they non-existent? Those beginningless. Then they came into existence. Some glass blower made the glasses. So even though the prior non-existence was beginningless, it had an end. Now, if I break the glass, its existence will end. And now we will have subsequent non-existence, which has a beginning but no end. I don't find that construct particularly useful. The way I like to look at ignorance being beginningless is this. Who had a dream this past week? Yes? Know anybody?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Mhm.
What did you dream about?
Oh, moving houses, helping a friend, a dog.
Okay. And did you see the beginning of the dream?
No.
When we dream, all of a sudden we're in a situation, and part of the nature of the dream is the mind creates an assumed, unexamined cause and effect past. So when you were looking for houses, were you driving around?
I don't remember. But
Let's
maybe,
just say
yeah,
you're
let's say
driving
I
around.
was, yeah.
How did you get from your house there with Lloyd into the car driving around looking for a new house?
I don't know.
And you never think to ask.
No, you're just in it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Do you all see that? That's our experience. So spiritual ignorance is the same way. Now listen very carefully. Frequently in class, you will have moments where your mind is free from vasana. We get very quiet. Just listen to the outside sound. Who hears it? You see, there's no person there. It's just being heard. Many of you are having that direct experience. And when egoism comes upon you, you never see it begin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's beginningless, just like a dream. It's not like the movies where they run the credits at the beginning of the movie. So that's what I find a more useful way to look at the idea of ignorance being beginningless. Now, it has an end. Right here in class, you tuned up the mind. Noticed your essential nature. You see there's nothing there. Where did Wendy or Puneet or Saundari or Daniel go? They disappeared just as completely as the dream disappears. It's just very subtle. Just like when you awaken from the dream, everything is different. All the issues of the dreamer become meaningless when we have that shift. As this verse says, when you see, oh no, I am not the subtle body. I'm not the jiva bhavana, the feeling that I'm a person. I'm sakshi, I'm the witness. It's clear, nothing touches me. I don't need to be fixed or improved or secured. You've awakened from the dream of ahankriti, of egoism. And just like at night, when you fall asleep and the dream begins, for some of you, by the time you get to your car, thunk, Avarana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. Oh, what am I going to do about this? And how can I hope I hold on to what I heard in class tonight. See, even right there, ego will use it. I need mine, I need mine, I need mine. Gone. You're caught up in the stupid ass dream of egoism again. Do you see it? So how do I stop the dream. If I feel like a person, I'm in the dream. If I can remember, stop, remember who I am, this turning of the mind, and all that subtle dream of the subtle body falls away. Now, in other scriptures, Shankar will use this example. In South India, in the villages, outside the village or alongside the village, they'll have what are called tanks, which are usually made of stone. So they'll be like a river. And they're steps. So the river will come down and there'll be the first tank, which is where the drinking water is. And then the next one down is for bathing. And then finally there's like for washing clothes and stuff like that. But algae grows on the tanks. And they let the algae grow on the tank because the algae kills the bacteria. So when the ladies come down from the village, and they're all, these beautiful brown-skinned women with these tiny little necks, and they have this piece of round donut of cloth, this huge 4 or 5 foot clay jar on their head. They don't even touch it. As they're talking with each other. Any of you seen that in the villages? You guys?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. They get down to the village, they put the jar down. Then what do? They go to move the algae away. Then get the potable water. And then guess what happens in the tank as the ladies are going back up to the village? The algae comes back. So underneath the algae is the clear water. Just like my essential nature is clear and empty. But it gets occluded from my experience because of vas. So back to Atik's question. What do we do? What we call jnana abhyasa, the practice of knowledge. Over and over again. Koham, who am I? What is my essential nature? I'm the witness, Sakshi. I'm not the stula sharira, the gross body, with all its parts. And I'm not the sukshma sharira. Meaning, thoughts, feelings, impressions, desires, aversion. Any thoughts on this practice? With what we've said in mind, please read the English of this verse again. Or 2 verses.
Dream is the state when this subtle body is distinctly in expression, where it expresses all by itself. In dream, the intellect by itself reveals as the agent of experiences, etc., due to the various impressions gathered by it in its waking state. In this condition, the Supreme Self shines in its own glory, with the intellect as its only conditioning, witness of everything, and it is not contaminated in the least by the activities of the intellect. Since it is entirely unaffected, it is not tainted by any action that its apparent conditionings may perform.
Yes. So, how many of us have had regret? Oh, why did I do that? Oh, I wish I hadn't said that or hadn't done that. Is that feeling? This practice ends regret. The action was done by the body. Why? Force of the past maturing. The reactions, regret, shame, guilt, sadness, are just the mind's reactions. I am not touched by it. Just watch it go on before you. Don't get involved with the drama. Now, at the level of what we call vyavahara, transactions, if you've hurt or harmed somebody, apologize and try to do better. But getting upset, identify as the bad person. So, and it's also true of positive things. Oh, I'm so good. I'm doing so well. Look at me. I didn't really either. Whatever you did, force of the past maturing. The evaluation of your mind. I'm really important. I did so well. Let it go. I do nothing. I am ever the witness of the activities of the subtle body. This is the practice that Shankara is implying in this. Any thoughts about this? This is exactly what we were talking about before class. Next verse. This is such great stuff.
Sarva Vyapriti Linga Gamidam Syachidatmanaha Punsaha Vasyadi Kamiva Takshanaste Naivatma Bhavat Sangha Goayam. As the tools of a carpenter are his instruments, so this subtle body is an instrument for all activities of the Atman, which is knowledge absolute. This Atman, therefore, is perfectly unattached.
So, not the greatest of all metaphors, because I always think of a workman making choices and making decisions and stuff like that. Those are still part of the equipment. Yourself does nothing. It doesn't think. It doesn't feel. It just shines as pure awareness. This karta, this agent, the one who is doing the doing, is a function in the subtle intellect, which then impels the senses into activity through the body or the subtle body. And the subtle body has reactions and evaluations to it. These are not bad. They're just not you. You are word we've been getting in Panchadashi, Kutastha. This is a term actually he borrows from Gita. Kuta has two meanings, it can mean an anvil or it can mean a mountain. You want to think of an anvil just stays as it is. And the blacksmith, works the sword or the knife or the horseshoe or the barrel hoop on it. The anvil's kuta. And sta means to stand or be established. So the self just stands still. And everything else moves. Don't believe me. This is a hypothesis. You perform the experiment in the laboratory of your own life, your own inner experience, to prove or disprove it. You see whether or not yourself is the witness of everything. Next verse.
Andhatva padatva dharma saugunya vegunya vashadhi chakshushaha badhiya mukatva mukhastathaiva shrotradi dharmanu tuveturatmanaha. Blindness, weakness, or keenness of the eye are conditions merely due to its defects or fitness. So too, deafness, dumbness, etc. belong to the ear, etc. These attributes can never belong to the Atman, the all-knowing principle, the consciousness.
So you have the various conditions of the physical body, which may be similar to the various conditions of the subtle body. I think some of you may have a similar experience in the waking state. In my physical body, I have profound visual impairment, I have macular regeneration. I almost never have visual problems in my dreams. My subtle body seems to see just fine. But all of those experiences in the physical body or the subtle body, I better said the gross body or the subtle body, do not belong to the self. The self is nirrupa, without a form. Nirmalam, without any taint, no dirt. Vast, empty like the sky. Next verse.
Section 25, Functions of Prana. Ucha vasanishva vasai chibranashu taprasapanda dhyu kramardika kriyaha pranadi karmani vadanti tajna pranasya dharma vashana pipase.
So, in many of the yoga traditions, there's a tremendous, I'm sorry, read the English.
Experts call inhalation, exhalation, yawning, sneezing, secretion, death, etc. as functions of the pranas, while hunger and thirst are the dharmas of the main prana.
So, in the Raja Yoga tradition, there's a tremendous emphasis on what we call pranayama, which is the control of the vital energy through visualization and control of the breath in various ways. Major part of the yoga tradition. It's a valid tradition. It is not necessary to practice pranayama at all. And we've gone into some of the subsidiary energies, flows of the prana. They're usually classically divided into what they call the Panchavayu. Did we go through this in this class?
I don't think so.
We did in Atmabodha. So the Panchavayu means the 5 subtle airs. Vayu means air, Pancha means 5. So there's the main prana, and that controls inhalation. Then there's apana, which is the downward movement. We have an expert here. Do you want to go through the 5 of them, or you want me to do it?
Please go ahead.
So apana is the downward movement, exhalation, and some schools also include excretion in that. What were you taught?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Then I always get these two confused. So samana is the next one, and that one's circulation, right? Samana is the vayu that governs the circulation, not only of the blood, but the endocrine system, all the various circulatory things that have to do with the body. So some yogis are able to slow their heart rate down so it seems to virtually stop, and then speed it up and stuff like that. Just through practicing pranayama, they gain control of that. Dhyana is digestion. So this controls not only food, but some people also say like the information coming in through the senses, how we digest it and what we let go of is also part of that vayu. And then the last one, udana, controls thinking. And in pranayama, you have various breathing techniques, and through various parts of your head and body and stuff like that, and what they call bandhas, where you do locks, where you stop the breath, contain the energy. What is it good for? It will improve your health, but it also works on the nervous system. So, for example, some people, when they start to meditate, have a freak out because there's a whole lot of energy and they start to tremble or shake, or they get scared because there's all this energy moving through their body. Who has had experiences like that? Now, news for you. Your nervous system is like the filament of a bulb. So if you run too much current through a thin filament, it freaks out. It gets overheated and it could even break. So what do? You get a bulb with a thicker filament. So what pranayama will do is open up the channels of your nervous system. So as you mature in your practice, enormous endless amounts of Shakti, of energy that move through you, and you are still. Many people think that if I'm having all these phenomenal experiences, I've seen people do that. Oh, look, I'm having a spiritual experience. Well, it's just an indication of how gross you are, basically. Clean up your diet, do some asana, do some pranayama, and more energy can move through you, and it won't cause you to shake, rattle, and roll. Now, the main thing to know about the prana, some people, they just, it's all about the energy. Especially now these tantric workshops, people are doing a lot of breathing, stuff like that, doing breath work. They don't even call it tantra, call it breath work. It's fabulous because it cleans out all sorts of psychic stuff as well. Prana is an object of awareness. When you're healthy, your mind's clear, you've been exercising, a lot of vital energy, a lot of prana. If you had a heavy meal, you're feeling a little depressed, you're getting old. Prana. But do you not know the rising and falling? Now, one of the problems we have in the Vedas, in very early writings, the word prana is used as a synonym for the self, for Brahman, for consciousness. Some people take this literalistically. Oh, yes, Brahman is prana, so I'm pranayama, that's God. It's one of God's glories. Any thoughts on this? Next verse. By the way, been there, done that. When I was a young kid, I was doing Kundalini yoga and huffing and puffing like nobody's business, getting higher and higher. That's not it.
Section 26, ego discussed.
Oh, yes.
Anta karanameteshu chakshuradishu vashmani aham itya bhimanena tishthatya bhasa tejasa. The inner equipment has its seat of expression in the sense organs such as the eye, etc. Identifying with them, it exists clothed in just the reflection of the Atman.
Yes. So the senses occur in the subtle body. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. For example, we have them all in a dream. And it's through the senses and the subtle intellect and the mind's identification with it that we get part of our sense of who we are. So it's the same me, Jim, who sees the table and hears the traffic. You see, I coordinate that data, the psyche. I identify, and it gives me this, we call it chit chaya. It's one of my favorite words. Chaya means shadow or reflection. a reflected self, a shadow self. But it's a function in the intellect. It's not evil. It's just not you. Next verse.
Ahankara savigneya karta bhokta bhimanyayam satvadi gunaye yogena chavasthatraya mashnute. Quote, know that it is the ego which, identifying with the body, becomes the doer or the experiencer. End quote. And in union with the gunas such as sattva, this ego assumes the three different states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep.
And does he say where the quote came from?
No.
It's probably from the Upanishads. Shankar will do that a lot. Okay, so the word that is usually translated as ego is ahankara or ahankriti. The word ego was coined by Freud, I think. It's from the Latin, ego, I am. But the Sanskrit is rich. Aham is simply the first person pronoun, means I. Kara or kriti comes from the root kri, which means to make or to do. We get words like karma, action, karana, cause, kriya, an ongoing action. So ahankara are the things that happen in the psyche, in the subtle intellect actually, that make or create a sense of I. They are I maker thoughts, is what they are. So if I have a sentence, I am, and there's a blank. I am Jim. I am fat. I am male. I am old. I am stupid. I am good. I am successful. I am a loser. Everything on the blank, that's the kriti part. Aham plus kara, kriti. I maker thoughts. And this manifests, and the words he's used here is karta and bhokta. Karta means a doer, comes from the same root, kri. So the sense of doership, agency. Bhokta literally means enjoyer, but when it's used technically like this, it means experiencer. So we enjoy pleasant things, and we can say we enjoy unpleasant things, experience things. So it gives rise to the sense of agency. I had lunch with my friend Mark today. Doership. I really enjoyed it. Experiencership. And that's what gives rise to this sense of ahankara. That's how it manifests in us. Now, it can thicken and thin. see if we can do an example of this now. Everybody look at Wendy. Now let's see if she spilled her lunch or dinner on her blouse. Does she have any spinach in her teeth? And is there a booger in her nose? Everybody look right at her. How's this make you feel?
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Self-conscious with a small s. Now, when you're dancing or listening to music or maybe cooking, meditating, that sense of small self gets very thin. You're not aware of Wendy very much, are you? So do you see it thicken and thin?
Yeah.
It can't be you because you're watching it change. Do you see that? So when you stand up and do your presentations at work, you used to tell me that that used to make you feel uncomfortable and stuff. Doing better with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot better.
But when it made you feel uncomfortable, that was this ahankara thickening. And then when you're involved in a project, you're out gardening or something, playing with the baby, thins. You're not thinking of yourself at all. Now, the most painful position of this ahankara, I call it the shit fairy that sits on our shoulder. How am I doing? Am I okay? What do they think of me? That sound familiar? So painful. Paranoid self-observation is ego's most painful position. Now, two very simple techniques to lessen it. Pay attention to God, serve another person. Now, what Shankar is going to say, the subtle thing is to see ahankara is a function in the subtle intellect. It's not you. And the proof of it is you see it. You see it rise, you see it fall. Deep sleep goes away altogether. In deepest meditation, it's gone. And its nature changes when we begin to see it for what it is. Then we no longer have the need to defend, protect, or secure this shadow self, which is just an event. It's just a function in the subtle intellect. That's all that it is. It's not about trying to beat up the ego. I'm going to kill my ego. I'm going to practice self-abnegation. Wear a hair shirt. Where ladies don't put on any makeup. I guess the guys can wear makeup now too. I'm going to uglify myself. Self-abnegation. Somehow this is going to fix the problem. The problem, that's like the snake superimposed on the rope, and I take out the baseball bat and start beating up the snake. It doesn't work because you're not dealing with the real problem. How do I see the rope? I understand the snake is an optical illusion. There's no snake there. When I see egoism for what it is, that it's an illusory sense of self. It's simply a function in the subtle intellect. When I see it for what it is, its nature changes. It becomes a useful part of our equipment, and it no longer gets all caught up in paranoid self-observation with the compulsion to protect, secure, and defend. Very important stuff. We'll do more work on these ideas. Adhere to that. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.